Hello, hello. This is Dallas Cohen, the Rebound Coach, and you are watching or listening to an episode of the Rebound Coach Live. And I'm so glad you're here today. Again, my name is Dallas Cohen, and you might be like, excuse me, what is a rebound coach exactly? Why should I be here listening to you? What's this all about? Well, I have the honor and privilege of bringing um, inspiration, equipping, and motivation to people who would receive it. So, in case you've never met me before and we haven't had the opportunity to get to know one another and we've never shared a virtual space before, I'll give you a shortened version of who I am and why we're here. So, the headline of it, I was married to a man for 10 years who wanted me dead, which sucked real bad. So much so that eventually he and his mistress were plotting my murder. And by the grace of Almighty God, I'm leaving a lot of details out. For the grace of Almighty God, not only am I still alive, my children and I are thriving, we're safe, we're well. And out of the whole scenario, I wrote a book, which was actually my second book. So this book is called I Choose Life. And the way that I connect that is, I could allow the identity that my ex-husband had planned for me, which honestly, there was a lot of spiritual abuse going on, emotional abuse, financial abuse going on. But I could allow that I had, quite frankly, agreed to and lived under for 10 years, tell me who I was and who I was allowed to become and what my life was going to be like and how many days I had left on the planet. Or I could choose life. So that's why the name of the book that came out of that is called I Choose Life, Rewrite Your Love Story and Change Your Legacy. And it's a memoir, and it's not just a story for story's sake. This has helped many others, survivors of domestic violence, folks who've just had real tough relationships, or people who love people who've had tough relationships. If any of that resonates with you, I highly recommend you go get this. You can pick up your book at thereboundcoach.com/book. That is thereboundcoach.com/book. Okay. I rushed through that because today is story time with Dallas. Did you know you were going to have story time with Dallas? You definitely are. So if you're watching this with us live here on Facebook, or you're listening over on Clubhouse where we simulcast in real time with me tonight while this is airing, it's the end of the year. So it's the end of 2022. This is the time where, people are really busy with holiday stuff, whatever that is for them. We're a Hanukkah house over here, but whatever your traditions are, people are whipping out all their traditions. and it can be quite taxing. And we know that depression rises this time of year. As a matter of fact, just some quick statistics, about 33% of people who were studied said that their stress rises this time of year. And of course, higher stress means higher cases of physical illness and mental illness and depression that can potentially lead to suicide. Another statistic is that 64% of those with mental illness said that their symptoms, their conditions got worse over this time of year. And typically people look to depression from loneliness. So while people are stressed or people have unrealistic expectations of what the holiday is supposed to bring them, the warm fuzzies just don't come. They're not warm and they're not fuzzy, right? Or they miss a loved one. Either they can't get to, whatever they call home, they can't get to that place, or, someone has passed and they're mourning that loss. And while those symptoms are very, those circumstances, I won't say symptoms, but those circumstances are very real and cause very real trauma to someone's heart. I want to talk about something that happened to me. This was, and I actually make sure I don't miss anything. Oh, the other thing that's going on right now. So Christmas is the holiday most Americans observe. As I mentioned, we're a Hanukkah house. The differences in those meanings are, I won't say polar opposite, but very different. And I'll talk next week. I'll talk about more of the Feast of Dedication, which is what Hanukkah is. The word Hanukkah means dedication. And so I'll talk more about kind of the meaning behind. And if you're ever curious about what are all the Jewish people doing right now, what does that mean? I'll be going into that next week. But I told you the book I wrote, I Choose Life, was the second book. So in 2015, I released my first book, and it's called Goodbye or Go Through: How to Live Happily Ever After When Life is No Fairy Tale. Now, you don't often hear me talk about that book at all, because it was a very different season of my life. It was that season when I was married to the man who wanted me dead. I got married in 2010. I released that book in 2015. And so it was very different seasonally. It was absolutely my 10,000% truth at the time. And to be honest, even people who know me now and know my story now have read that first book and still get value out of it, because it's good. And when you do something that's from God, even as you grow and mature in your seasons, what God has birthed will always live and will always bring back to him exactly what he intended. So tonight's going to be a little different because I'm going to share a chapter of that book with you. I call it the Christmas Miracle That Wasn't. So if you read the little teaser, the teaser post or the teaser for the Clubhouse room, you read a tiny bit of the situation we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to read it to you. And I want you to think about, what resonates for you. What are you getting from this? I have a couple of themes I want to touch on when I finish reading the chapter. And those of you who are in Clubhouse, I want to hear from you. And if you're on Facebook, just type in the chat comment and I'll see that too. So let me know, like, oh my gosh, that really resonates with me. I've been there, right? Okay. I just want to make sure I've followed all my stuff. All right. Story time with Dallas. Pull up a chair, get comfortable, get your tea. I like candles. That's just me. But whatever you need. Okay. Story time. It's chapter 9 of that book, Goodbye or Go Through: How to Live Happily Ever After When Life is No Fairy Tale. The Christmas Miracle That Wasn't. I want to tell you a true story about the Christmas miracle that wasn't and what that might mean for your life. So, once upon a time, a few years ago, there was a government shutdown that rocked my personal world. It put me out of work for 5 weeks. This resulted in much anxiety, the way only a true planner can experience it. It wasn't too bad at first. I enjoyed time with my family. I awaited the inevitable end. But when the shutdown ended and my job still wasn't ready for me to return, the pressure intensified and I started to scramble. In the press, I began looking for natural, supernatural, healthy, and unhealthy means of guidance, direction, and solace. Living in the godly home that I live in, our first response was prayer, then more prayer, and more prayer. But any believer can tell you that when your problems are screaming so loudly in one ear, it's very difficult to hear God clearly with the other. So I'm desperately looking for prophecies and trying to get dreams interpreted to give me insight on what to do. I'm finding pieces, but not a full picture. No full puzzle. So what's going to happen to me and my family? I believe that I heard the Holy Spirit whisper, I have a ram in the bush, but I'm not sure that was God. And even if it was, that's not an instruction on what to do. And I really like doing things. A part of me wants to work, sell, and do anything in attempts to stop sinking. Part of me wants to, I'm trying to scroll through here. Oops. Part of me wants to think this is an opportunity to change course into something more meaningful. Part of me is waiting for calamity to happen so I can be justified in not trusting God. Part of me is praying and hoping for a miracle to save us just in time. All of me is waist deep in boiling frustration with a pained face depicting a cool head, seeking solace and finding none. Unfinished business. I'm allowed to resume work. However, my hours are severely shortened. It's mid-November and I have 2 babies crying and there's nothing to feed them and no money to go get something. Work, but not enough. Food, but not enough. Gas, but not enough. Dollars, but nowhere near enough. Not to mention the creditors are starting to call in their bills. The boiling oil is up to my chest and someone has turned up the heat. December 1st is approaching and I don't have the rent. And unless a miracle happens, I won't have the rent. This is the first time in my married life this has happened to me. But financial lack is an issue in my life that goes way back and admittedly shapes my decisions in the area. You see, I was raised by a man of great faith, always willing to take risks in the name of trusting God. Consequently, this led to financially unstable upbringing and homelessness twice by age 25. Along with the highs of faith came familiarity and a comfort zone of lack, losing electric and water and doing what you had to survive. The lesson I took from that was that a faith walk in my finances wasn't a risk I was willing to take, and that whatever vocational plan God had for me would have to be a part-time thing until God decided to pay for it. In the meantime, I would take care of my basic needs since there was no guarantee that He would. Today's circumstances meant that even my safest efforts to save myself are failing, and I must depend on a God I have yet to fully trust to be dependable. Seems as though I will never escape the cycle of lack, no matter how positive my confession. I try to keep my thoughts from spilling into words, but I'm not always successful in keeping the lid on. The miracle. December 1st and 2nd pass without rent. I haven't called because I don't know what to tell them. On December 3rd, a friend asked me how things are going. I tell her in a very calm voice that I'm in a crisis and cannot see my way out of it. She tells me of a program that offers utility and rent assistance, and I thank her and say, maybe that's the miracle I was praying for. I abhor this method, but these are desperate times. I've done all I can do, and I'm waiting on a God that hasn't responded yet. Or maybe He wants us to go down? On the way home, the Lord whispers, "You can praise me like it's already done." My response was, "But it's not done yet. I'll believe it when I see it." A song comes on the radio that reminds me that He is faithful. Hope against hope. When I get home, my husband excitedly pulls me in and shows me what has come in the mail. It's a cashier's check made out to him in the amount that we need to catch up on the very late utilities, have December's rent, plus an extra couple $100. I almost passed out. This stuff doesn't happen to me. Not me, the struggling, doubting me. Maybe on the merits of my husband's faith, the Lord is moved. Whatever the reason, I am surely grateful. My husband and I start to strategize on how we'll pay everything and what to do with the surplus. Let's be wise, but let's have fun. Let's do everything we didn't have the money to do. Not just basic needs, but second and third level needs. Let's go on a date. Let's buy that thing you wanted. It wasn't just a miracle. It was Christmas. It was all the ecstasy of having what you need and what you want at the same time. Even before the check cleared, I began to tell testimonies of the Lord's goodness. Even the landlord would waive late fees as we waited for the funds to clear. I felt the weight rise from my shoulders and life began to taste good again. As a matter of fact, it was about to taste great. The breakdown. The bank tells us it will take 5 days to cash such a check. This strikes me as odd, but I keep on my happy face and wait patiently. After 5 days, they say 3 more days, and I cannot quiet the alarm within. What's wrong with our miracle? After pressing into the issue and a few more days of late fees or late bills, we're told that the bank the check was drawn on says they never issued it. The check was fraudulent, and trying to cash it has cost us a hefty fee from the funds we did have. My heart sank. I knew it all along that miracles like this weren't real. My husband went for a walk, and I lost it. I had the closest thing to a nervous breakdown that I had ever experienced in my life. Through heaving sobs, I cried out to the Lord, "Why? Why have you forsaken us?" I was out of any illusion of security and into the fire. The heat was too much for me to bear. The weight that was temporarily lifted was compounded and thrown back on me with such force that the wind was knocked out of me. I had no plan, no answers, and no hope. The God I needed not only did not come through for me, but tricked me into believing that he did. The betrayal was earth-shattering for me, a force I couldn't live under. Seeking an outlet for the pain, I ran into the kitchen and grabbed a knife to kill myself with, or at least play with the idea. Screaming from the floor of the kitchen, I cried out, "You failed us! You have failed us! You have forsaken us! Why did you trick and lie to me?" I could hear demons whisper to me, "You see, he abandoned you. Now you're on your own. He was never going to help you. He can't be trusted." I screamed in agony and agreed with them. There was no hope for me. I heard a demon say, "You see, he's not real. You don't have to believe in him anymore." Even in my excruciating pain and misery in the moment, I knew the devil had overplayed his hand. I knew that no matter what this was looking like and what I took from it, God was indeed real, and I would never agree otherwise. He may not help me and he may not like me very much, but he is real, and quitting is not my style. So I picked up my aching soul and my shattered dreams and put the knife away. I couldn't stop the tears for another 2 days, and my voice was now hoarse from the episode. The voice of reason. It was December 11th. The landlord hadn't heard from me and had sent us a 3-day eviction notice. We received notice from the electric company with a shut-off date of December 17th. Without action, the water would be shut off by December 30th. We put the word out that a quote-unquote needy family needed assistance, hoping that maybe someone would help us in the holiday spirit. A friend responded that he wanted to come over and talk to us. I replayed a time years ago when my father and I faced homelessness and extreme lack, and a well-meaning saint, quote unquote, came over to tell us that we didn't know how to manage money and we must be out of God's will because of our situation. I braced myself for this kind of lecture, but that's not what happened. The voice of reason gave us revelation, testimony, and encouragement. We were to give the landlord what we had and promise the rest later. He also agreed to match my efforts in paying the rent 10 days from then. I was calmer and weary for the wear, but a peace was coming. A Hanukkah miracle? In the process of applying for assistance. It's not a guarantee, but it's the only shot we have left. It takes days to complete and has several hoops to jump through. By the grace of God, we received assistance to keep the lights on by December 16th and the water by December 20th. My wages plus the matching gift paid the rest of the rent on December 24th, and by Christmas, the immediate crisis was averted. But why do I call this a Hanukkah miracle, you ask? Well, in the story of the miracle of Hanukkah, the people wanted to rebuild the temple, but only had enough oil to light the menorah for one night. God did not make oil for them, nor did he magically restore the temple, but he caused what they had to last long enough for them to make more oil, an 8-day process. The take-home message is this: sometimes God will not take you out. His intention is to take you through. This has two meanings. First, to go through means that the pressure won't let up, It will get worse before getting better. And if you are hoping for relief, you are hoping in vain. Faith for what you're hoping for isn't required here, but trust for strength to endure is. Before everything had panned out, I was storing water and planning for how to take my family through a literal dry spell. The second meaning would be that going through means just that, through. Don't stop midway and decide, like I did, that there's no hope and that your life will be a perpetual trial. Be quiet if you can't be positive, but expect to one day come out. Otherwise, you will fulfill your own prophecy. Don't get caught up waiting for a Christmas miracle. Wait, sorry, skipping words. Skipping page. Okay. Don't get caught up waiting for a Christmas miracle to take all the pain away in one fell swoop. The disappointment of that not happening the way you expected is too great a price. Know that whatever comes, you're not abandoned and you're not alone. He is real and he is faithful. Sometimes it's just messy for a long time. It doesn't mean he hasn't acted on your behalf. Take heart. In this world, we will have trouble, but he's overcome the world and will move heaven and earth to honor his word to you. And that is the end of the chapter. And I thought that would be fitting for this season, for this time of year, and the kind of struggles people endure in this kind of time of year. That was very, very real. And it was one of 2 suicide attempts I had in my entire life. And it was just the feeling of not, like, all of my efforts came to nothing. That was really what it was. I had and continue to deal with, putting a lot of faith in my own ability. And so, I was the only breadwinner in the home. I don't speak negative about my husband in that book because of the season I was in. And even still, I try not to slander now, but facts are facts, right? So I was the only breadwinner in the home. I had a long pause in employment, and everything was backed up. And so the man I was married to wouldn't help. I had 2 babies. That was 2013. My kids were born in 2011 and 2012. So I had a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old, and if you can imagine trying to feed your babies and not knowing where you're going to get food from, everything's about to be turned off. And I had lived that way growing up. I'd been without water. I was storing water because I knew how. Right? I'd been without electricity. I'd been homeless twice by the time I was 25. So I was a young woman, even when all that was happening. I was a young woman, young wife, young mom. But I'd been there before. And in that time, I was with my father when we were homeless. I was with my father when the lights were out, and I was storing water and all of that. So at least then I wasn't the responsible party. Right? My father would make decisions and I would do whatever he asked me to do. Right? So at the end of the day, I didn't have to figure it out. I was along for the ride. It was a bumpy ride, but I was along for the ride. In this case, I was the responsible adult in my marriage. I was the responsible party for our household. And when what I could do wasn't enough, I felt very, very, very hopeless. And for those of you who've experienced hopelessness, you know what that's like. And so a couple themes I wanted to share. And I do have a video too. If you normally come to these, I have videos. I have one too. It's different than normal though. So we talked in the chapter, I talked about Christmas miracle versus a Hanukkah miracle. And it's just a way of thinking about it. Okay. Religious decisions aside, it's really just a 2 ways of looking at a thing. So the way I phrase it, a Christmas miracle is like, oh my gosh, something miraculous happened. And not only do I have what I need, I have what I want. So that first, when that check came in, I remember just as clear as anything. I was like, I can't believe this happened to me. Like, this is the stories you hear on the television. This is stories you hear in the testimony service. And a check came in the mail and it was more than like, what? Right. And we were planning all this extra stuff, it's win the lottery kind of feeling. Okay. Not that it was, anyway, it wasn't lottery amount, but it was for us. Right. So that was the first thought. Hanukkah miracle, or the idea of Hanukkah and the story behind it, is about being maintained. And even as a person who's come out of a domestic violence marriage, and I advocate for people who are on their way out of situations like that, even in the out, there's still a through. There's still a process. I wrote that book, that first book, Goodbye or Go Through, talking about the gift of goodbye versus the gift of go through. And there really are two. There's two gifts. Go through is a gift. It is a strength. It is a skill. And there are times when going through is just what it is. It's what it's going to be. And you have to face that, and how you will face it really informs your experience. And so how do you handle disappointment? How do you handle disappointment? I had severe disappointment in that instance. And in many cases around the holiday season, people have severe disappointment in themselves, in their lives, in their family members, in God, and whatever. They were expecting something and feel let down. How do you handle that? What do you tell yourself? And what can you tell yourself? We can tell ourselves that today is just today, and tomorrow's a new day, and anything is possible. And that can be really hard when you can't see any other options. I don't, that first book, I don't give you visuals, but as I read it, I remember him going for that walk when we found out the check was fraudulent and we went from hopeful to no hope. I remember him going for a walk, and the baby's in the room crying, screaming, and I was screaming. I went to our kitchen and I had that knife in my hand, and I fell on the floor in the corner. So there was the stove on the right side of me, and the wall was behind me, and I was on the floor just racked and sobbing and screaming, and I was mad at God, and I was really, really afraid about what I was about to face. And I remember being homeless with my father, and I remember putting stuff in storage and trying to find a place to sleep. And I'm thinking, like, what am I going to do with all this stuff? How am I going to make these decisions? There's nobody to help me. My fully grown man that I was married to could not help me at all. Couldn't or wouldn't. And it was terrifying. It was terrifying. And I was really upset at a God who would walk me through that, or who would have me face that. And the reality was that's not at all what happened, but that's what I was really, really afraid of, and responding to things that didn't even happen, right? It's things that I thought that was going to happen. So bringing in perspective is really powerful. In that moment on the floor, I texted somebody. Now check it out. I had one of those Obama phones. Y'all remember the Obama phones? I had to think about it. I had to think about who was president. It was 2013. Anyway, I had one of the free government phones that was a flip phone, and you had to type. It wasn't like we have now. So it was the keys on the phone and the ABC on the one, the EF on the two. So you had to press things a bunch of times to send a text. Oh my God. So I sent text. I sent emergency text in that moment to somebody who would listen to me. She wasn't a best friend or even a close friend, but she was somebody I could reach out to. And I don't remember if she said something to me first and I responded, or I reached out. But I was sending text messages saying, I hate God. I can't believe this is happening. Like all the things. And she was being a voice of reason even before the voice of reason I talked to you about. I wrote about in the chapter. So getting perspective is really important in those scary, I'm going to die moments. You feel like the world is crumbling. Reach out and tell somebody something. It's just, it can be the difference between life and death. Now, my kids were crying in the other room. I don't know how serious I was or wasn't in that moment, but I know there was a knife in my hand and some slits on my wrist. And it was pretty traumatic. That entire episode was pretty traumatic, and God was very faithful and gracious even in those times, even in the worst of it. I was responding to something that hadn't happened. I was afraid of something that had not happened. Right? So bringing yourself perspective. What are the facts of the case? What's really happening right now that is absolutely true? Not what you think is might be true around the corner, not the possibilities. What's actually happening right now? You're breathing, you're alive. For the moment, I was indoors, right? And there's hope, right? So I want to share a song with you. This is not a song I wrote, but it's a song I sang. It's one of my favorite hymns. It is called "Be Still My Soul," and it brings me a lot of peace. And so I want to share that with you, and then we will close out. Let's see if I can get it all to go the way I'm asking it to. Okay. Be still, my soul. The Lord is on thy side. Bear patiently the cross of grief or pain. Leave to thy God to order and provide. In every change, he faithful will remain. Be still, my soul, thy best, thy heavenly friend. Through thorny ways leads to a joyful end. Be still, my soul, thy God doth undertake to guide the future as he has the past. Thy hope, thy confidence, let nothing shake. All now mysterious shall be bright at last. Be still, my soul, the waves and winds still know his voice who them while he dwells below. In you I rest, in you I found my hope, in you I trust, you'll never let me go. I place my life within your hands alone. Be still, my soul. Be still, my soul. The hour is hastening on when we shall be forever with the Lord. When disappointments, grief, and fears are gone, sorrow forgot, love's purest joys restored. Be still, my soul, when change and tears are past.
all safe and blessed, we shall meet at last. In you I rest, in you I found my hope, in you I trust, you'll never let me go. I place my life within your hands alone. Be still, my soul. In you I rest. In you I found my hope. In you I trust. You'll never let me go. I place my life within your hands alone. Be still, my soul. Be still, my soul. Be still, my soul. It's going to be okay.
I recorded that. I recorded that at one of my favorite places. Actually, it's where we host Sanctuary Experience twice a year over at Clearwater Beach. And even watching the video of the waves and the peace that comes on the water, like I can still feel it even as I watch that recording. So I just want to encourage you, no matter what you're facing, no matter what you're facing, there's hope. There's hope. If you're still alive, if you're listening to this on a replay, if you're watching this, it's because there's hope. And don't give up. Don't give up. You can choose life. So thanks for spending this time with me. If you're watching this on the replay on Facebook, please leave me a comment. If you liked that song and you want to go hear it again, it's on my YouTube page, youtube.com/Dallas Cohen. So you can go check it out. It's a beautiful scene to watch as well. So thank you again for spending time with me tonight. Clubhouse, we're getting ready to chat it up. I can't wait to hear your reflections from this. And until next time, everyone, choose life.